everybody doing today in this wonderful paradise of Maui? Yeah, glad to be here. My name is Mark Ryan, and I'm gonna be the one to introduce Joe Vitali and Dr. Len, and I'm gonna talk to you, ramble on here for a little bit. Those of you that know me, I have a tendency to be a little hypnotic and go all over the place, and when I'm talking, I'll do my best to keep it fairly linear here. Last night, my girlfriend Kathy was asking me a question about looking around at all the beautiful people that were here and the great event of the luau for those of you that were here. And she asked me, she says, do you realize that if you hadn't introduced Joe to this, that all these people wouldn't be together? And, you know, there's part of us sometimes that wants to push things away and not accept it. And that part was going on, and I was like, well, maybe yes, maybe no. You know, this might have happened anyways and probably would happen, because to me it's about the energy, what Ho'oponopono is doing, what the divinity is doing, and it's that process that the divinity does through us brings us here together. And so whether it was me introducing Joe to it or somebody else, it was meant to happen. And the other thing I got thinking was, what if everybody in this room made this happen? What if all of you individually made this happen and caused me to be introduced to Ho'oponopono and then introduce it to Joe so we could all be here today and then take it out into your lives? How much farther can that go, and what's going to happen after this event? Hi, come on in. So I will start off back. On the way we were flying out here, there was a young lady back of us that lives on Maui, basically lives out of her vehicle and has some pets with her, and she started talking about the volcanoes in Hawaii. Had started going off last week, I think, again, some of the volcanoes, and they were flowing red rivers of lava. And it brought me back to a memory when I was a kid, and I remember reading this book as a child, and it had this lava flow on it, and it had a lot of green, plush green, and then had houses that the lava was coming close to. And this book was about this young man that lived on the big island of Hawaii, and what it was like to live close to a volcano and be around a volcano with the fear of the lava coming towards the house. And a lot of times when a volcano goes off, it gives a foreshadowing that it's going to go off. It'll give rumbles, it'll give a little bit of smoke going up in the air. People know the lava dome will start coming up. People know that this lava, it gives a foreshadowing. And I think what happened with me, what's happened through me throughout my life, and as we talked to Joe and Dr. Len and yourselves, there's foreshadowings of things. Things that you can look back in your past and say, were these little signs, were these little foreshadowings of what's happening now, what's to come? Excuse me. When I was in the military, I met a friend of mine. He was a roommate of mine when I was in Germany. And he was a Hawaiian, and his name was Howard Salmo, a good friend of mine that I'm getting ready to go see on Monday. And it's been 30 years since I've seen him, but he was just an amazing individual, and he taught me a lot about spirituality, and he would talk about some of the spiritual traditions of Hawaii and what went on here, and what some of the kahunas and the different healing techniques, and how the language is really a healing language, and the language is meant to bring positive things into your life and to bring healing into your life. And I'm probably not explaining it as well as Dr. Len could or Howard could, but it was a magic. And he would try to explain a lot of this to me and tell me some of the miracles and things that would happen. I wasn't ready for it at like 17, 18 years old, but it was a foreshadowing. It was kind of a rumbling of what was to come. Even to the fact of Hawaii 5-0, watching Hawaii 5-0, I used to love that program and be really drawn to the island of Hawaii and what was going on and the people and the culture that were there. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold and flu that I'm still cleaning on here. Then, when I started getting to NLP and training with that, some of my teachers that I really started training with, they had also lived on the island of Hawaii and Maui and different places throughout and studied some of these ancient techniques, and they had come up with a process that was their own version of the Ho'oponopono that they had been taught. So again, it was a foreshadowing of what was to come. It was a different yet similar type of Ho'oponopono than you're going to learn over this weekend at the Zero Limit Seminar. And many, many, many of those things have happened as a foreshadowing of this event. when I was in Mount Shasta, there's a lot of synchronicities that happen. I used to go there every year for about 17 years. I had a little booth there and started selling sunglasses there and did very, very well. And so I would drive from upstate New York every year, every summer, to Mount Shasta like a pilgrimage. And the synchronicities that brought me there, all the things that happened along the way. And I have a good friend of mine, his name is Obi Newman, and new man, Obi, new man. So I'm always saying, you know, Obi, a new man, which he always is. He came up to me one day and he says, you know, for some reason, I feel like I have to give this to you. And it was a pamphlet folded up with one of our other friends' name tag on it. And he goes, it's just, I think you're going to be interested in this. And it had blue lettering all over it, like a purplish blue lettering. And I say, okay, I'll take a look at this. And they had gone and seen Dr. Len for an introductory session. I think it was on a Friday before that. I went through, I read it, and it blew me away. And the great thing was, like, I got it. And again, let's go back to foreshadowing. Dr. Vitali recently had his book, Adventures Within, which is a personal tale about his spiritual growth and what has happened to him along the way. I had recently read that book, and in that book, it talked about the Book of Est from Warner Harrahart and how much he liked it and enjoyed it. So I went out and got the book. It took a long time for me to get it because all the libraries didn't have it anymore, and they couldn't figure out. They're like, we don't know why people are taking this book. Well, I went to eBay and found out there's $95 because they're not printing it anymore. So I knew what all the college students were doing with the books to make a little bit extra money, and finally got one, a special edition with a credit card from Cornell University, and read it. And that book talked about being responsible. One of the chapters of it was being responsible for your world 100%. And I had to keep reading it over and over again. It was a simple concept, but it wasn't clicking in my head. I just couldn't get it. But yet something inside of me, that foreshadowing, knew it was powerful. It was really powerful. So I kept reading it, and then one day it was like, oh, I got it. I got it. And then it wasn't too long after that I went out to Mount Shasta and got this little pamphlet that talked about 100% responsibility. And I think it was an article from the Seattle Times. It was a New Times magazine or something where Dr. Len had done an interview, and I got it. It made sense. All the stuff that, and it was a similar type of foreshadowing that was recognizable within me. And that process there, through reading it and getting excited about it, I knew that there was going to be something happening with it. It was something big. A lot of times I talk to Joe and I get these intuitions and I say, I don't know what it is, but they come in these packets and it's like everything is there with it. And I know what's going to happen with it, but not necessarily how it's going to unfold. And soon after that, it was about a month later, I think Dr. Vitali had asked me if I would help volunteer with booths because I had been doing the sunglasses. I knew how to run booths. And he asked me if I would go up to the NGH, which is the National Guild of Hypnotherapists up in, I think it was New Hampshire at that time, Nashua, New Hampshire. And I was fresh off of this experience of reading his book and then getting the pamphlet and reading the pamphlet and getting it and understanding it. And there was something in the foreshadowing, because he resides in that same place within me, of that same energy. When I met Joe years ago, that same type of thing happens. Like, this guy's going to be my friend. I don't know why I know this, but I know this. He's going to be a good friend. So it was a foreshadowing that was in that same area. So Joe was kind of on the cusp with his spiritual marketing book and doing all the marketing of that spirituality. But I knew from Adventures Within that if he got this concept, that it would change the world. There was something about it. Again, my girlfriend asked me, she goes, did you realize what would happen with this once you told Joe? And I'm like, yeah, I realized that if I could get him to get it and understand it, I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was possible if Joe understood this and what he could do with it. So the first year I went to the NGH and was talking to Joe, I was like, how do I bring this up with him? And I started talking to him. I asked him, I said, have you heard about this therapist, this doctor, psychiatrist in Hawaii that never saw any patients? I mean, took on a patient. I guess, Dr. Len saw him walking around looking at him in the court, but healed them. And basically the hospital had to close down, which Joe will tell you more about and Dr. Len will tell you about. I said, did you hear about this guy? And all he did was pray over him. Basically say the Ho'oponopono exercise that you're here to learn. And he kind of looked at me funny. And I told, because he knew I'd just come from Mount Shasta. He says, what happened to you out there in Mount Shasta? That's kind of like a little weird what you're talking about. And I said, no, it's great. Anyways, he never really took on at that year, which was about 4 years ago, 4 years ago. And we did the booth, sold real well. He goes, man, he says, we really did good. It was energetic. Narissa was there. Joe was up there. I was there. Telman Knudsen, I think, was there. So we did very, very well with this seminar, or selling his products at the booth, and asked me if I'd come again next year, and I said, absolutely. So a year went by, and this time I came to the seminar, started right away, the first day, and poor Narissa, we were setting up, and Narissa was in the back of the room. And I asked her, I said, do you ever check into that therapist that I was telling you about, the guy that could heal just by doing this Ho'opono process? He goes, something's been getting me about that. He goes, tell me more. And I started telling him more, and he'll tell you about it. And he got excited, really excited, and said, Narissa, do you mind watching the room? Now, this is first thing. It's starting, and thousands of people that are going to rush Narissa, and me and Joe are leaving to go get on the internet to check out stuff about Dr. Len. So once he did that, I knew it had taken, that the same thing that had taken inside of me had taken inside of him. So then it was up to me to support Joe in whatever way I could with this knowledge.